everything is going to be wide open. Whatever you have a concern about, any questions you want to have about my involvement, anybody's involvement, the involvement of anybody, or what went on in the Widow Sons, I would be more than happy to address those for you. So let me start. First, let me start by thanking all of you for the hospitality that Vicki and I have received. In particular, I want to thank the Connecticut Widow Sons and James, Dr. J, and the Massachusetts Widow Sons. You know, I was not planning on coming here this year. I had already committed to going to Florida, and actually I just started on the job, so I didn't have much in the way of vacation time. So, full disclosure, these guys are helping get me here, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I'm very humbled by the fact that you guys are willing to stand here and listen to some of my ramblings and you know, kind of my reminiscing, which is part of what we're going to do today. So let me begin by telling you that I feel I was very privileged by having been able to share the win with a lot of good brothers out there. A lot of good men. Unfortunately, we've lost some of them. In fact, in the Florida chapter, we really only have 2 of us that are left from the original 7. Myself and Dave Davis, who is still somewhat active in Orlando. We lost 3 others that died, including my son. And we have 2 others that, due to choices of their own, as far as I'm concerned, are masonically dead. They're in jail for drug dealing. So, you know, I wiped them off their slate. They're done from my perspective. I don't have much tolerance for that nonsense. So anyway, so how do we get here? Well, first let me give you a disclaimer. What I'm going to share with you are my recollections, but I stand by them. What I'm going to share with you is what I know I experienced and what I saw when I was there. I'm not here to speak ill about anybody. However, I am here to hopefully bring some clarity and perspective to the history of the Widow Sons. I believe in being very transparent. I will not hide behind any faceless emails, faceless websites, or, you know, anything in the dark. Okay, I'll gladly answer any questions from anybody at any time, eyeball to eyeball, in the light of day. Anybody else that operates in any other manner, I have absolutely no respect for. And those that know me know I pretty much hold to that. So let me first share a little bit about...
That's the Lord intervening.
Is that the great architect telling me to shut up? I understand.
The architect.
I understand. Thank you. Yeah, okay. So anyway, for those of you that don't know me, let me share a little bit about me first. I'm a Freemason, obviously. I've been in the fraternity for over 25 years. I'm also a member of the Shrine, Scottish Rite Freemason, and a couple of years ago I was dragged into the Order of the Quetzalcoatl, if anybody's familiar with that. Yeah, so I got drugged into the queue. That's one of those things where, you know, you've done a lot, so now they want you to do more and pay more. So anyway, but it's fun. It's fun. So although I'm not what you would consider an active Widow Son at the moment, because of my history with the Widow Sons, I was given an honorary membership from Florida and from the state of Virginia several years back. I still ride a motorcycle. I still own a motorcycle. So I guess I fit all the parameters for still being a widow's son. Okay, I'm a kite carrier. I got a motorcycle and I ride a motorcycle. Also, I'm a working man. If I get a parking ticket, I pay it. If I get an electric bill, I pay it. Take that where you want to. I'm the founder of and past president of the Florida Grand Chapter, past president and past secretary of the Niceties Chapter, past Florida State Coordinator, and past Widow Sons Southern Jurisdiction State Coordinator. And we'll talk about the Southern Jurisdiction here, or the jurisdiction, in a little bit. During my tenure, I charted several states as well as the first active chapter across the Atlantic. I worked with Brother Ray Brenny in England to get them started. So everything else that has taken off from there is based on the good work that Brother Ray did. Brother and his wife, Ray, and his wife, Zena, have experienced some health problems, so he's kind of inactive at the moment. But he was the first Widow Son in England. I also put together the bylaws that are used by Florida, and I understand that they're the basis for what several other states are using, with, you know, amendments and changes based on what you need for your locality. So how did we get where we are? Well, several years ago, I was looking for something that could help me combine my 2 interests at the time: masonry and writing. I've been writing since I was 18 years old, and I've You know, bear in mind, since I'm only 30, it hasn't been that long. So I started searching and happened to stumble upon a rudimentary website that Carl Davenport had set up. So I contacted him and I joined in the conversation. At that point, to my knowledge, there were no patched or well-organized chapters writing. The organization was in what I would call its forming stage. If any of you have taken any management courses, and I'll get off subject here a little bit, I teach university courses too. You know, organizations go through some stages. They're forming, they're storming, and they're norming. And unfortunately, we've gone from norming right back to storming right now. But their organization was just kind of in flux. You know, we just kind of start to build. There was a lot of discussion as to what the Widow's Sons patch should be. And Carl Davenport was already using what we now jokingly refer to as Elvira as the emblem on the website. My understanding from Carl at that point was that he had come up with that design as it was emblematic of a grieving widow. She has an ashen face and her right hand is on her head in a sign of anguish. That, brethren, regardless of what anybody tells you, is the original and authentic Widow's Sons emblem. Please don't misconstrue that by thinking that I somehow disrespect or don't approve of what we're now referring to as the chicken wings patch. Okay, I got no problem with it. What I have a problem with is people trying to rewrite history and somehow say, no, the widow wasn't the original. If that is being said, I'm going to use that politically incorrect word, that is a lie. Plain and simple. Now that doesn't mean we can't respect everybody and doesn't mean we can't respect the new emblem. Absolutely not. But we need to respect tradition. As Masons, we should have a real sensitivity when it comes to tradition. So anyway, after further conversation, it was decided that the widow would be our symbol. It was already being used, it had some, you know, feeling to it, etc. So I took on the responsibility of getting the first patches made. I fronted the money. I went out and found a supplier. We started making the patches. Let me explain to you why the widow is what we decided on. Our idea was the widow would be a little edgy. Our idea was that being a little edgy, we might be able to attract some men that maybe weren't attracted to, you know, suit and tie masonry. Look around here. That's us, right? You got it. Okay. All right. So we got the patches made. At that point, Florida was the only had patches. Again, and this is not to pat myself on the back or anybody else, just to show, to make sure that you understand the history of the Widow's Sons. What I've got up here is the very first patch ever worn and flown that represented the Widow's Sons. Okay, this is the very first patch on, you want it up? Yeah. I showed this in Kentucky a few years back, but I want to make sure everybody sees it. That is the very first Widow's Sons patch. Regardless of what anybody tells you, that's the first patch ever worn by a widow's son on the road. Nothing wrong with the other patch, but this is the original. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
So anyway, we kept going, and I formed the Florida Grand Chapter with 6 other Masons. Unfortunately, as I mentioned a little bit ago, all but 2 of us are gone. You know, things happen. We decided to take a slow approach. We decided to start visiting lodges and just become known. Get people know who we were, what we did, how we did it. We didn't jump in and immediately start, you know, waving patches in people's faces, etc., etc. There were other things we needed to get done first. So we kind of took a slow approach to it. We decided to visit lodges. We supported activities. In fact, it's not unusual. I spent a lot of time visiting a lot of lodges throughout Florida, some of my own, some with my fellow brother writers. It was not unusual for us to schedule something. In fact, I remember one particular case on the east coast of Florida. I was living on the west coast of Florida. Some lodge, I think they either had a fire or their roof got blown off. And we got a group together. I rode from the west coast of Florida, picked the guys up in Orlando, went over there, supported their activity, helped them raise some funds, and then drove back all in the same day. And I know that Florida is a long, skinny state, but driving from Southwest Florida, up by Daytona and back, and attending a function in one day takes at least a couple hours. Takes a little bit of time. So anyway, so we kept progressing, we kept building, and there was already a group of Masonic riders, Hiram's Wheels, that were in Tampa. Made contact with, actually they made contact with me, and before long they decided to patch over, if that's the word you want to use, and they became a Widow Sons chapter. So that's how we started growing. We then met with the COC to, make sure that we had a clear understanding. Myself and actually the 6 original guys went to one of their COC meetings in Daytona. Smitty at that point was the Outlaws boss, and I don't know if he still is or not, in Florida. Met with him. He was fine. We shook hands with him. He says, I got no problem with the Masons, and that's it. Again, I want to make sure you understand, we didn't go with the intent of asking permission, because I think as men and Masons, we have a right to do what we think is right. But we simply went to make sure that they knew who we were and that we didn't experience any problems. And we've had the occasional hiccup, but overall it's gone pretty darn good. The relationship down there with the 1%ers has gone pretty darn good. So anyway, so we just kept riding and growing, riding and growing. Very early on, I had the opportunity to visit Chicago. I met Carl Davenport and, I don't know, 5 or 6 other brothers up there, and quite frankly, I may have killed too many brain cells, but I don't remember their names. but I know that Carl was the one that I went up to meet. And I went up there for the purpose of giving them patches. Now, I know that there are some out there that may think, or I've even heard, the Army chartered Chicago. Okay, again, I like to be very clear. I didn't charter Chicago, but what I did do is I provided them with their very first patches, which, by the way, was Elvira. Okay, that's the very first patches they wore. And I drove up there, or I flew up there because I had to get some other stuff done, met with them and delivered their patches to them. So the very first ones they had came from us. What I can say with certainty is that the Florida Grand Chapter can be considered the first fully active writing patched Widow Sons chapter in the world. Period. End of sentence. And I don't care what history is rewritten out there, that is exactly what happened. Florida Grand Chapter was the very first one that truly... Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Florida Grand...
I think it's that speaker there.
Don't worry about it. The Florida Grand Chapter was the very first one to truly organize, publicly recognize itself as a Widow Sons chapter, and publicly have a patch. Plain and simple.
Hiram's Wheels.
What?
The second chapter.
That was the second chapter.
Oh, Florida Grand Chapter. Okay.
Florida Grand Chapter. Florida Grand Chapter. Yeah. Again, please don't take this to mean that I'm somehow berating the efforts of everybody that came behind us. Don't take it to mean that, we don't respect the chicken wings patch, if that's what we want to call it. On the contrary, all I want to do is make sure that a lot of this information that I'm seeing get out there is clarified. I'm not asking anybody to switch over to anything. I just want to make sure you know where the roots of this organization are. Now, the charting of the chapters initially was a pretty informal thing. People would contact me through the website. I'd contact them back. We'd talk on the phone. I'd ask for copies of their Blue Lodge cards so we could verify their membership. And quite frankly, in the beginning, we didn't even have official charters. We verified they were Masons, talked to them, got to know them, allowed them to use the Widow Sons name. Later on, we started with the idea, hey, you know what? Let's give them charters because people like to get something. So, for example, when we started charting throughout Florida, there's several Florida chapters out there that I gave, a charter to. And in fact, the charter that I have, I see what you guys are doing with it now. What we did was actually pretty damn ugly, but I'm not much of a computer whiz, so I just got some fancy paper from Staples or something, and we printed it on there. But again, we were growing. We were just starting to move ahead, and some of those things just really, quite frankly, hadn't been thought out. So anyway, once we verified their membership as Masons, got a good feel for them, we let them start operating. The Widow patch then started, though the patch said, started to get distributed. And I want to make sure that we're very clear on something too. The Widow patch set has always been sold, and I'm not sure what you guys are doing now, but I'm sure it's probably pretty darn close. But the Widow Sons patch set, the Widow, has always been sold at pretty much at cost. Back then it was costing us right around 25 bucks for the whole thing, maybe a little under, I don't know, $23 and change for, the square and compass, etc., etc. and we were selling for $25. The extra few shekels that we got either went for postage if we had to mail it to them, or it got thrown in the kitty for, you know, a fund, you know, widow's fund or something later on. But it was not a moneymaker. Again, it was being sold pretty much right at cost. The widow patch, and I think every patch, should never be sold with the intent of any widow's son making a personal profit. That's important, gentlemen. That's important. Think about what's been going on. Now, don't take that to mean that I don't agree that if a brother has an embroidery business, he should not make a fair profit. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool capitalist. All I'm saying is that brother should be allowed, if you choose to use him, to make a fair profit, but the organization should never be manipulated to get people to use a particular patch for the reason that somebody's going to make some money out of it. Okay? Follow the money trail. I'll leave the rest of the research up to you guys. But the widow's patch has never, and as far as I know, never will be, right guys?
Never will.
Never will be sold for a profit like that. There's an idea behind this, and that is not it. So let's get back to the beginning of the organization and the ideology behind it. In my conversations with Carl, it was very clear that our intent was to help stem the tide of declining Blue Lodge membership and introduce Freemasonry into the world of motorcycling. If it were otherwise, based on some of the stuff I'm seeing out there now, why was there not an official Widows Fund from the very beginning, especially in Chicago? All of those are recent developments. The thought that there was a lot of good men, who I would consider, again, as not your traditional suit and tie Masons, who could bring fresh faces and fresh ideas to the fraternity, was one of the driving forces of forming this organization. And as you can see by the results in Florida and many of your own states, I think you guys have done a pretty damn good job of that. How many Masons have you brought in simply because they wanted to be widow sons? Lots, right?
80 in Florida.
80 in Florida. That helps. That helps keep the Blue Lodges going, because we're all about supporting the Blue Lodges. Now, I understand that there's been some attempts to revise history, but again, I state emphatically that was the reason. There were discussions about widows' funds, etc. That was not the primary driving reason for the formation of the widow sons. We always stayed away from directly seeking official Grand Lodge recognition, not out of any sense of disrespect for the great work they do, but simply because we did not want to be involved in political aspects that come with it. Come on, guys, we've all been exposed to the Grand Chapters. God love them, they do a great job, but look around you. Does this look like a Grand Chapter mob?
Grand Lodge.
Grand Lodge mob?
I do too.
You know. We can support Blue Lodges, we can support Freemasonry by acting Masonically and still do it independently. And I think a lot of you guys are doing a damn good job of it. Now, I understand that there's some text on the internet regarding the fact that the only reason the Widow Sons were founded was to provide for the relief of Masonic widows. Again, that concept is not completely historically true. It's not accurate. The objects of promoting fellowship among Masons through writing were at the forefront based on my conversations with Carl Davenport from the very beginning. For anyone to now suggest that adding the aspect of promoting fellowship was not included until 2 years later, which is something I've read, is at best a misconception, at worst, purposely disingenuous. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Carl's website lists the founding of the Widow Sons as 1998. Remember, I got into the conversation with them probably late 98, 99. So that's about the time they put out this website and, you know, started with the idea. If you note, Florida's founding date is 1999. So I don't know how these 2 years come in. You can verify this very simply. If you go to widowssonsfl.tripod.com, what you'll find there is the original Florida page that is still cached. We don't use that. That site hasn't been used forever, but you know, things in the internet never seem to disappear. But if you go to widowssonsfl.tripod.com, you'll see the very first website that we in Florida used, very clearly showing the establishment date of 1999. You can't dispute the facts. It's there. So during those first years, Carl claimed to have several recurring personal issues. So I basically kept things going. I always maintained contact with Carl, so the widow sons did not move in any direction that was not discussed and agreed to between us. Carl then ended up moving to the panhandle of Florida, where he said he was again fighting personal issues. And several times, in fact, intimated that he wasn't going to make it. He didn't know he was going to live. Well, he's still around, so I guess he's made it. The widow sons of Florida raised a substantial amount of money to assist him, and I made a couple of trips from Southwest Florida all the way up into the Panhandle, which is,
I know.
thank you, yeah, 8-9 hour ride, to get funds to him and to help him out. That is fact. That is true. He went through this several times. Again, I want to be very clear that the direction of the widow sons was very clearly discussed between us. At one point, Carl was in Florida, and Fred contacted us. And he expressed that his wife did not like the widow patch and that other writers made fun of them. He wanted us to use something else. At this point, Carl told me in very strong language, Carl's from Chicago, you forgot what kind of language he used, that he was very upset with Fred, and he wanted me to tell Fred to get out if he didn't like it. The relationship between them seemed to be very strained, at least from what Carl was telling me. I did note, with interest, that Carl wanted me to tell Fred that he wouldn't tell him himself. Again, guys, I like to be transparent. If I have something to say to you, I'll look you in the eye and I will tell you. I'm not going to ask anybody else to do my dirty work for me. Plain and simple. So anyway, in an effort to maintain harmony, I gave the issue some thought and proposed that we set up the widow's sons in a similar fashion to the Scottish Rite, northern jurisdiction, southern jurisdiction. And the reason I thought, hey, you know what, that might work, was because, again, according to Carl, according to Fred, his wife didn't like the patch and other writers were making fun of him. Now, I still don't understand the being made fun of with patches, because, I don't know, in Florida we dealt with 1%ers all the time, and I've yet to see anybody make fun of the widow. But anyway, that being as it is, the idea was, the northern jurisdiction, southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite where I belong, wings are down on the double-headed eagle. Northern jurisdiction, wings are up. So basically the same organization, just a little difference in the patch. So we thought, you know what, maybe this is a way to help keep growing. Maybe it's a way to keep people happier and keep the organization going on. This would allow the use of two different patches, yet still show us as an organization with the same basic beginnings and goals. Some now have told me that that was an error on my part. Got no quarrel with that. Based on the way things have turned out, I don't know, maybe it was. But I'll tell you that I acted on what I thought was the best interest of the widow sons at the time. But to all newer widow sons, please take note. This is how the new patch came into use. The new patch is not the original, and although I fully respect and support those that wear it, don't confuse it with the original. So those who may constantly harp on changing everyone to the new patch, I would kindly ask that you respect the original concept. Do you go to your Blue Lodge and tell them to change the square and compass? Do you go to the shrine and tell them to change the crescent and scimitar? I would not demand that those that are wearing the new patch convert over to the Elvira patch, so the same courtesy should be extended to those that wish to stay true to the original founding patch. Brothers, if you happen to be one of those and are not able to show fraternal respect and acceptance for both patches, going both ways now, then kindly turn yours in and go join some other organization. We're Masons and we need to respect each other as Masons. When we go to Blue Lodges, and I'll tell you, I've been very privileged. I've attended lodge in Istanbul, Turkey. I've attended lodge in Vienna, Austria. I've met with Masons in Azerbaijan. I will tell you, everybody does something a little different, but we all respect each other. We all respect each other as Masons. If that respect is missing, and you're one of those, pardon my French, get the hell out. So let's go back to the jurisdictions. After discussing this with Carl, I contacted Fred and explained the concept. The organization was growing, so it actually seemed like a good middle road to maintain peace and harmony, as well as position the widow sons for continued growth. It would also help address Fred's contention about his wife not liking the patch and other writers making fun of him. Fred became the Northern Jurisdiction Coordinator. I took on the Southern Jurisdiction Coordinator position. And let's be very clear, these steps were taken with the full agreement and support of Carl Davenport, Fred, and me. This was not something that just came out of left field. So to now hear anybody say, oh, I was never in favor of that, is not true. Carl, meanwhile, was still on the sidelines due to personal issues. So we agreed on the division of responsibility so we could keep chartering new chapters. The states were divided, and the announcement was prominently displayed on the Widow Sons website that was hosted on themastermason.com. It is interesting to note that although we very clearly identified which states should deal with which jurisdiction, it is very interesting to note that just a few weeks after that announcement was made, everything was clear, Arkansas was somehow accidentally chartered by Fred, even though they were very clearly shown as being in the Southern jurisdiction. Now please let me explain. We have many good brethren in Arkansas, and I completely support and respect what they do. I completely support and respect the patch that they wear. This is in no way a reflection on them. But I want to make sure that we're clear as to the character of the people involved in this whole situation. If I look you in the eye and I tell you this is what it is, you guys that know me, that's what it is. If I change my mind, then I'm going to sit down and have a parlay about it and see if we can work it out. But I do not accidentally do things that I should not. Again, all respect to the brothers in Arkansas. Good bunch of brothers. They should continue to do what they should continue to do. That's fine. Absolutely no reflection on them whatsoever. So let me explain the intent of the jurisdictions. It was an effort, again, to allow the Widow Sons to grow, yet maintain the integrity of our Masonic relationship. It was never meant to control the state grand chapters. But obviously someone had to provide starting chapters with some guidance, advice, permission to start using the Widow Sons name and emblems. Much in the same fashion as a new Grand Lodge would need to be chartered by an appropriate existing Masonic body, right? You're going to start a new lodge, you don't just pop up and say, oh, we're now AF and AM, and give yourselves a name. Somebody has to coordinate that. This is very similar to my understanding of what the efforts over the years have been of having these state coordinators that there's so much controversy about, and the recent conference calls that are going on. As it has been presented, I do not see this as an attempt to usurp the Grand Chapter's authority. It seems like a very sensible way to maintain open communication between chapters and to be in a position to keep chartering new chapters. I find it curious that some take such offense to this. I recall when Carl himself was talking to me about setting up an international organization. In fact, at one point, he even floated the idea to me of the Widow Sons becoming involved in motorcycling flea markets so we could own that. In similar fashion to how motorcycle clubs, he mentioned the Hells Angels, run certain money-making activities. You make what you will of that proposition. Obviously, I was not in agreement with that. I am not a 1%er. Never will be. Around this time, we also copyrighted the Widow logo. Carl was having one of his personal issues again and not working steadily, so I paid for the copyright, and we included Carl's name to make sure that he received credit for his, for his creation. Carl was fully aware and wanted to do it to protect the use of the logo because he was 100% behind the Widow. I paid for that out of my pocket. I think some of you may be aware that there was some controversy since apparently the basis of the logo was a comic book character. I'm not much of a comic person. In fact, I'm not so much of a computer person. So when Carl originally said he came up with the logo, I took him at face value. Again, if you're a brother and you look me in the eye and you tell me something, I give you the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes it bites me in the ass, but it is what it is. Since then, this has been cleared up, and to my knowledge, there are no issues with the logo at this point. I do note, though, with curiosity that when this issue came up, there were several members ready to pounce and take advantage of this to promote their own agenda. I remember some of the poisonous comments being thrown about by some and supported by others. Elvira is illegal, we're going to get in trouble, we're going to get thrown in jail, etc., etc. immediately pounced. A lot of that came from one certain individual. If you know the history, you'll know who that was. So, not exactly what I would consider Masonic behavior. So let's move on now. I think Carl at one point went to a church in either Alabama or Mississippi, I can't recall, and he went through some sort of training period, and then he wanted to start a church. You know, he and I, again, we kept in constant contact. He mentioned that he was very upset with them because this church would not fund him starting a church. He didn't like the way the Widow Sons was going, but however, I just couldn't get a real grasp of what it was that he was actually getting at. So I told him that the organization had been through many changes, and that I did not think it appropriate for anyone, including me, after not being directly involved for a few years, to attempt to step in and take it back over. I told Carl that there were many good brethren, all of you sitting here today, and those that aren't here, who had and were still working to make the Widow Sons a success, and that they, you, were the ones that deserved the credit for keeping this moving forward, not any of us who had stepped aside a few years ago. Brethren, in my opinion, Carl's, Fred, and my time is past. It is now your time. I personally would consider it a shallow attempt of self-aggrandizement for anyone, me included, to attempt to take credit for what the Widow Sons has accomplished over the last several years. Were we involved? Sure. Am I proud of that? You betcha. Did we contribute to the founding? Absolutely. Does this give any of us some special right at will to step in and out of the organization, causing confusion and disharmony? No. It does not. Me included. Brethren, I liken this to parenting. The act of procreation, although it feels good, I won't get any argument there, will I? Although it feels good, does not make a person a parent. It simply makes you the biological source for that new life. If you step away and let someone else raise that child, who's the true parent? In my humble opinion, it's the one who spent their time, money, effort raising that child. Taking that a step further, even if a person does not step aside but stays involved and the purpose appears to be self-serving, then I still say that person is not a true parent. In short, the parents of this organization are you, and those who have recently come before you, and those that will come after you. You are the guys that continue feeding and raising the child, not anybody else. And that's a big obligation. This in no way takes away from the fact that Carl came up with the idea, nor the work that Fred and I have done in the past. It is just to put it simply, the good of the Widow Sons should come first. No one's ego and no one's pocketbook. Brethren, I was given a copy, I'm not a Facebook person, of a notice posted on what is being referred to as the Founders page. It speaks of states not giving up their autonomy and the fact that no committee or any person should join together to set any type of law or policy to govern the Widow Sons. If this is actually the information posted, quite frankly, I'm a bit disturbed. Claiming that participation in open discourse, exchanging ideas and coordinating efforts for the benefit of all is somehow a limitation on a state's autonomy, with all due respect, is utter nonsense and seems to border on paranoia. The fact that you and I discuss an idea does not take away my right to do something different. But the fact that you and I discuss an idea may contribute to me rethinking my idea, maybe improving it or changing my position, because, gee, even though I've made up my mind, maybe the facts will change it. You know, there are a lot of people out there that don't want to be confused once they've made up, don't want to be confused with the facts once they've made up their mind. What purpose is served by this type of fear-mongering? It almost sounds like some of our current politicians trying to divide this country for their benefit rather than bringing us together. The information also refers to the original intent being that the Grand Chapters were meant to operate under the rules of the State Grand Lodge. Absolutely not true. I already told you that our initial discussions were, we wanted to become an organization of Masons that rode motorcycles, not an official Masonic organization. We wanted to support Blue Lodges. Again, no disrespect to the Grand Lodges. And those of you that have gotten Grand Lodge blessing, God love you. Great. but that was not the intent. And again, I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm here to make sure that there's clarity on what started all this. Autonomy does not mean that there is no relationship or coordination of activities between organizations. It simply means that each organization reserves the right to act in its own best interest. Brethren, I ask that you keep your wits about you, make up your own mind, and judge each man by his character. Past behavior is often indicative of future actions. The future of the Widow's Sons is in your hands, and that's exactly where it should remain. During the past few weeks, there's been a lot of information floating around as to the status of Fred and Carl as Masons and Widow's Sons. I'm not going to comment on that because, guess what? I believe in the state's autonomy. And if that's what Illinois decided to do, that's what Illinois decided to do. That's an internal issue for them to resolve. I have noted, though, that some who tout state's autonomy for some reason seem to condemn Illinois in this particular situation. I don't quite get that. As another example of state autonomy, the very recent actions of the state of Wyoming, state from which I've been living for a while now, run counter to those of Illinois in the situation of Carl. Someone may not agree, but as an autonomous grand chapter, they have the right to act as they see fit. Do you all know that Carl went up to Wyoming and was presented with, okay. Okay, the state of Wyoming decided to do that, and whether we agree or not, they've got a right to do it. It's their choice. I do find it interesting that I left Wyoming a month and a half ago, and just a few weeks later, without any announcement, Carl Davenport showed up in Wyoming. I'll leave that to your interpretation. So before closing, let me leave you with the following to ponder. This bit of Native American wisdom comes from the Constitution of 5 Nations. I'm a bit of a history buff. The Indian tribes in the Northeast had formed together for the benefit of all, and this agreement was made. I find one part of their agreement very interesting and actually very appropriate for us. Could I have one of those?
That's what I got it for.
Thank you. Excuse me. So anyway, back to the Treaty of 5 Nations. So I find it very appropriate for all of us to consider in reference to the Widow's Sons. I'm going to give you their comment, but I'm going to paraphrase and put that in context. Remember, this is an organization of Indian tribes that got together. They got their leaders together. They elected leaders to positions, people that would make decisions for the benefit of the whole group. And here's what they said. And kind of maybe when I use the word nation, put in Widow's Sons. When I say the great peace, consider it peace and harmony. Here it is. If any man of the nation assists with special abilities to show interest in the affairs of the nation, he may be elected to a seat in the council. Should he ever do anything contrary to the rules of the great peace, no one shall cut him down, but thereafter everyone shall be deaf to the voice of his advice. Should he resign his seat and title, no one will prevent him. He has no authority to name a successor, nor is his title hereditary. Put that in the context of what's going on in the Widow's Sons, and in the context of what you know about the people that started it. So brethren, as you move forward and try to make sense of the noise around you, the differing opinions, the self-proclaimed chiefs, and I want to make something very clear too. I am not here to get any office. I'm not running for anything. I don't want any, I don't want to be elected or appointed anything. Okay? Like I said, my time has passed. I did my contribution. I'm now very happy to just see this thing continue to grow. So as you move forward and try to make sense of the noise around you, the differing opinions, and the self-proclaimed chiefs, look at each man, think about the comments from the Constitution of 5 Nations, right from up in this area, and govern yourselves accordingly for the good of the order. I'm sure there's going to be some who disagree and claim a different recollection of what I have shared with you. All I can say is it is what it is. I share this with you in the light of day, eyeball to eyeball, not anonymously. I don't send anonymous letters to grand chapters. I don't anonymously post things. I don't run websites that then I manipulate. Okay? That's not me. Everything's out in the light of day. So again, any questions you have, questions that have come up, please, pop them up. I'll be more than happy to respond, to the best of my recollection. And again, I want to thank you for your hospitality and the patience you've shown in listening to me ramble on about what happened 11, 12 years ago. Thanks, brother.
Wow, that's your speaking fee.
Alright, got a couple things just to finish up, to go over, and then we'll open it up for question and answers with Army. I know, hopefully that answered a lot of your guys' questions, and definitely bring them up. Guys, I've been talking to Army for, how long have I been bothering you now? For, is it close to a year?
Oh, at least, yeah.
You've been wealth of knowledge to me. It's a lot of you guys I've talked to, and you've heard it directly from him. You've heard some of the same things that I've talked to you guys about. Well, around the local area, what I've heard from Army, and of course you're getting a third, fourth hand, so you know it's always great to get from the source. Just a couple real quick things to go over. We'll go over. I'm not going to say the unimportant things because they're all important. Then there's just a couple things that got to get put out that everyone has to bring back and be aware of for themselves. First one is upcoming. Let's just go real quick. Upcoming events from the last conference call. We have Tennessee Biketoberfest, which is September 22nd this year. Contact Jesse Rushing or somebody from Tennessee and information on that. We have on September 18th, leaving the state of South Carolina. We have we're calling it the Cobra Ride for Vets. It's leaving South Carolina and it's ending up in I always say this one, I'm going to screw up, Old Orchard Beach.
Old Orchard Beach, Maine.
Yes. Maine, and there's a 3-day POW MIA event going on up there, and we were contacted about doing something to help them bring a helicopter up there for this event. Me being a glutton for punishment, most will probably say, I said, sure, I'll see what I can do to help organize something. All the jurisdictions from South Carolina all the way up into Maine, and including some other outside the Whittle Sons, we're coming together, coordinating, talking, and coming up with a route. Can I get Wally Mayberry, stand up? Wally Hawkins, stand up?
Oh, it's the other Wally.
Herb, stand up?
What's the date on that?
You stand up? Bill. I think that's all we have in here. Chip, I know you guys don't have too much going, but you're bringing bodies, but if you want to stand up, I know you guys should, is Scott here? Pulling? Okay. Scott, you want to stand up? These are the guys who are helping out with the coordination of this. So any information with the routes or anything like that you guys might want to get, hit them up, seek them out. They've been working hard putting all this together. That leaves Tuesday, September 18th from South Carolina, and we're going to escort this thing all the way up into Maine. And there's going to be checkpoints along the way. We'll have the website updated, which is CobraRideForVets.com, and you can get information. Anyone who's want to get involved and be part of it, man, everyone's more than welcome. This is a Whittle Sons. It's not a Whittle Sons event. The Whittle Sons have been asked. We're doing the whole ride portion of it, and we're going to get for that. Thanks, guys. Does anybody within your jurisdiction have any events coming up that they'd like to have noted that will go in these minutes? Which, by the way, the minutes will be posted up when, Mike? How long do you think it'll take you?
About an hour from now.
Really?
Well, y'all let me go